Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors and restorers. I'm doing a summary video on this latest early solid state Kenwood KA-2500, also known as the TK-250 and the TW-61, depending which market you're in. Some are Trio, some are Kenwood. Late 60s. So this is early solid state, but it's silicon solid state with one exception. We'll get into that in a minute. This one here actually still worked. Did not sound great, but still worked, and it was pretty clean. I mean, there's a little bit of dust and dirt that had to be blown out of it. The faceplate was a little smudgy. It cleaned up very nicely. Look how good the lettering is. I mean, this faceplate is a solid piece of aluminum. You can't even flex it. Knobs and everything cleaned up really nice. This one here didn't need, I didn't put like, sometimes you need to do repairs to them. Things that get broken, snapped off, jacks that are damaged, nothing like that on this one. And all the controls were very tight, hadn't been used for a while. So that part of it was great. I'm going to talk about the things I've done in the restoration. Let's start with the power supply. Original transformer. The diode cap .022 gimmick is what I call the gimmick. These caps are oil. I can feel the slime on it. Replaced with a .022 polyester, 600 volt, and an IN4007. Made in the same way. The main filter cap was a 50 volt 2200. I went up to a 3300 63 volt because this is a single rail power supply and the rail floats around 52 volts. So maybe this one was built to take it. I don't know whether the new ones will or not. This has the big terminal lugs on it. The new caps don't. Some of them do, but this one didn't. So I extend them with some 16 gauge solid copper wire, make a loop at the end, and use that as a termination point. And it's solid. It's in its holder with some heavy duty felt holding it down. There were 3 1000 microfarad caps here. This one is just downhill from this one with a 1000 ohm resistor. That's the next stage of filtering. I kept that at 1000, only raised the voltage to 50. 30 volts not a common size anymore. I doubled up the caps here. These are the speaker coupling caps. So the originals were 30 volt 1000 microfarad. They're now 50 volt 2200 microfarad. And honestly, I've rebuilt quite a few of these. You could go to 4700 microfarad. I can't tell the difference sonically. One thing that's the difference, when you turn these on, there's a bit of a thump. It's the design, single rail capacitor coupled. With the bigger you go in coupling cap, the bigger the thump. There's a couple things you do in the circuit to mitigate it, but a 2200 isn't going to thump very badly. You put in a 4700, or in some I've seen it like a 10,000, it's like wham when it turns on. Anyway, that's what I've done on this one. Now the rest of the unit, quite a few parts. All the electrolytic caps, and I use these work ones, the German ones, the WE electronic. They're all 50 volt caps, even if they're originally a 3 volt or a 16 or 25. To try to match all those sizes is impossible. And a 50 volt cap, as long as it's the same microfarad value, it's going to last longer. These are all 105 degree caps. And 4,000 hour caps rather than 2,000. So I went through the preamp, recapped it, took out all the 458 transistors, put in 2 N3904s. There's 6 on this board, 3 on this board. Replace those. Now the next stage of application, there's a little more current. What was in there? And you know, it really, I find it widely varies. I've seen some of these with C458s in all the stages, including the driver, which is ridiculous. It's a 2SC 984. That's what was the NPN. And the PNP, which was a germanium transistor in the Suzuki pair, was a 2SB89A. So I've upgraded that to a silicon transistor, and it's a 2905A. This is a 2N2219A with the metal case, which allows for better heat dissipation. The driver transistors in this design tended to be fragile. They're barely enough to drive the outputs and at the higher rail voltages. This same board you'll see in a KA-2500, a TK-150, TW-41 as well. It's good in that unit, but when they used it in this unit, they really should have beefed up those transistors, but it's done. Now it is beefed up. They're basically 1 amp transistors. Then of course all the bias pots and had these kind, the crappy kind, the weakest link in the whole amp. And there's 6 of them in this design. So this is protection level, this is center voltage, these two are bias. Sometimes you can just put a B on the board, C, protection. And of course setting that up, I've done videos in the past about setting that up, so I'm not going to cover that right now. Sometimes you get issues, and I think I did a separate video on this one. The emitter resistors for that pair, the driver pair, which is a 100 ohm resistor, quarter watt, should have been a 1 watt resistor. So I've upgraded that right there. This one, amazingly enough, as I went along, as I take out transistors and caps, I'll do a section. I do a quick test in the open circuit of resistors, and there were very few that were out of whack in this one. Very few. Which is good. Sometimes you're not that lucky. Let's see if I can swing it up here. Hopefully you can see it. I don't know if the camera's high enough to see this. Let me just check. It's on a tripod. Okay, let's move this up. Yes, there we go. Okay. So there's quite a bit of work on the bottom of this amp as well. There's 2.22 microfarad caps that are in. They're basically a network on the output of the speaker output cap. So it's a resistor cap network. It's just to tame the inductance of the speaker voice coil. Gives it better dampening. These here I found go leaky. This kind is some kind of mylar cap. So I put in polyesters. Very inexpensive now. Replaced a couple resistors in the power supply. You can see how these are connected underneath. 100 microfarad that does the phono board power supply. And so everything nice and clean underneath. Like I say, this was an amazing original unit. There's a couple of caps that get tacked on underneath. Some of these have the 47 microfarad bootstrap cap for the driver pair on the top side and the resistor on the bottom side. This one was the opposite. Just one of those things. Anyway, that's a quick review. I'm going to hook this up to a turntable and some speakers and see how it sounds. Thanks for watching and listening.